Hi, I'm Matt with State of Flux, here to give you my definitive ranking of the directorial works of Kevin Smith. If you want to see my individual reviews for all the films, just follow my channel and there should be a nice little video arrangement of the films of Kevin Smith. Select the title you're most interested for a deep dive analysis of each of the features. But here's my ranking from worst to best. So you gotta watch to the end to find out what my favorite one is. However, if you watch the individual videos, you should be able to figure that one out, because I think I flat out stated. Alright, so, in last place, worst film of the current 13 is Cop Out. Cop Out is an aptly titled feature film that is just a dumpster fire of a motherfucker movie. It's so fucking awful. I cannot express how not my favorite that movie is. There's literally nothing redeeming about it. So that gets my last place. And that one also kind of shaped Kevin Smith in a really not great way. However, I think the experience of making that movie led to some really interesting art that probably never would have happened before that. In my number 12 spot, we have Yoga Hosers. I don't think Yoga Hosers is a bad movie. I think it kind of gets crapped on quite a bit. I think it's kind of a weaker movie in Kevin Smith's lineup because there's not a whole lot of substance to it, but I think what works best with that movie is that it is a female-driven film that doesn't handle the characters in any kind of traditional way. And I think that adds to its uniqueness. It also is a movie that kind of zigs when it ought to zag, and that's kind of fun. You never really know where that movie's going. However, the movie is kind of unyieldingly stupid at times, but willfully so, and that was part of the artist's intent. It's still an entertaining ride, and you should see Yoga Hosers. It's much better than its reputation. In my number 11 spot is most people's favorite Kevin Smith, or I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people's favorite Kevin Smith film, or the introductory film to the world of Kevin Smith, and that would be Mallrats. I'm a local Minnesota boy, so Mallrats has been kind of ingrained in me from quite a young age, but I do think it's pretty weak. It's got a lot of rewatchability when you're getting introduced to like Kevin Smith movies, and now certainly with the current state of comic book lore, it offers quite a bit of rewatchability, but it's not very good. It is pretty funny. It lacks any kind of substance, and I think that's the biggest problem. It's kind of like Desperado to Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi. It's a restatement of what was said in Clerks, but whereas Desperado is just brimming with style and innovation for like how to shoot essentially Mexican Western, this film doesn't better anything from Clerks. It in fact looks kind of worse than Clerks in a weird way. So that's my thoughts on Mallrats. What it brought us was Jason Lee, so and probably the best Stan Lee cameo of all Stan Lee cameos. So for that, I'm grateful for Mallrats, and also if I'm trying to introduce my friends to Kevin Smith movies just to see if they dig on his sensibilities, this is a pretty good one to whip out. In number 10 spot is, at least he's stated many times, Kevin Smith's favorite of the bunch, which is Clerks II. At one point, I would have had this way higher on the list, probably in the top 5, probably even the top 4. But with repeated viewings and age, I've kind of aged out of Clerks II. I think the last 20 minutes is the best 20 minutes of Kevin Smith's entire career. And I like the opening scene, and I like Jay and Silent Bob sprinkled throughout. And I think Jeff Anderson gives the best performance of 2006, without question in my mind, and it is upsetting that he was not given any kind of recognition whatsoever. But other than that, the movie is kind of not very funny for good sections of it. And that's a little disappointing. And you get a weird regression with that movie, where I think from Chasing Amy onward, you got some semblance of progression in Kevin Smith's career. Clerks 2 was a step back. And they even made a documentary called Back to the Well, and Kevin Smith's the making of Clerks 2, and his whole point with that movie was just because you go back to the well doesn't mean the water's any less good, and that's true. That is a valid point. However, if you're looking at the entire trajectory of his career, shy of the final 20 minutes, that movie doesn't really have a whole lot to offer. But it's not a bad movie. It ranks number 10, so it's in my top 10 favorite Kevin Smith movies. Number 9 is Zack and Miri Make a Porno. This movie, I think, is really, really funny and really, really likable. However, it has large sections of the movie that just kind of come to a dead stop, and that's because Kevin Smith isn't making a Kevin Smith movie. Kevin Smith is trying to make a Judd Apatow movie and capitalize on what he thinks commercial comedies are like, and he's not really a commercial comedy filmmaker, and that this movie makes that kind of apparent, especially when at the time the state of comedies was you have actors who are really good at riffing off of each other, just kind of do improv riff and whatnot, but Kevin Smith is a comedy writer, and his humor is his dialogue is really quite good and oftentimes quite funny. So when the movie comes to a dead stop, so you can have really two really good actors riffing off of each other, it's fine the first time you watch it, but for any subsequent repeat viewings, those are the scenes that stick out like sore thumbs, and those are the scenes that are hardest to get through. That said, it's a really strong relationship film between Zack and Miri, how you watch a friendship develop into something more. And I think it's a beautifully shot movie that has quite a lot going for it. And also, Jeff Anderson is awesome. I will sing his praises all the live long day. Elizabeth Banks is really, really good in this movie. Seth Rogen, had he not been in Knocked Up, Superbad, 40-Year-Old Virgin, this would be his star-making movie. I'm sure of it. He is so good in it. And like the whole cast, everybody. There's not a weak member. Jason Mewes, on point, that boy. Alright, moving on. Speaking of Jason Mewes, we're going to do Jay and Silent Bob Reboot for the number 8 spot. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is, at this point, Kevin Smith's most recent film, and the first time I saw it I thought it was just kind of okay, but with repeat viewings it really is strong, and I think what really, really helps the film and really, really makes me latch on to and love that movie is the whole Harley Quinn Smith angle of the film. She is the prominent figure in the driving force of the second half of the movie. And once the criticisms or acknowledgments or a satire of reboot culture in films kind of goes as far as it can, it shifts gears and it sort of discusses how, like, it doesn't take art to have a reboot. It just takes a child, and your child is your own kind of reboot, and you do anything in the world for that child. And this film is a beautiful love letter to his daughter that he's very much in love with. This is the second movie he's made about that's essentially a love letter to his daughter. But yeah, I really like Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I do think it isn't quite as funny as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and I think that the first half being essentially a scene-for-scene remake of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back kind of loses its energy, but once Harley Quinn enters the game, the whole movie takes off. You get some of the strongest performances ever out of Jason Mewes. This was his best performance in any Kevin Smith material. Harley Quinn was award-worthy as well, and the return of Ben Affleck as Holden McNeil is just powerful. The 8-minute sequel to Chasing Amy in this film is stunning and is one of my favorite scenes that Kevin Smith ever wrote. Brings me to tears every single time. So yeah, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot gets a thumbs up in the number 8 spot, which means in the number 7 spot is Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Essentially the exact same movie. This movie is just brimming with energy, and infectious laughter and a smile graces your face the whole way through. it's not it's not a great movie. Let's like not mince words, but the energy, the love, and this is the first time Kevin Smith was like, all right, I made these movies for me. This one's for you, and it felt like that when I went to the theater in 2001 to see this on opening day. That is how this movie felt. It felt like this was a movie made specifically for me because I had invested in this man's career for 4 feature films by this point. This was the 5th, and I watched the dopey Clerks cartoon show. Like, everything in that movie was just like a send up to say, hey man, thanks for watching. And I loved it. And I think we have some really great performances in the movie, some wonderful cameos from like Jamie Kennedy and Carrie Fisher, and certainly Mark Hamill. Sean William Scott has some really great moments and stuff, but of course it's the Kevin Smith the crew that really steal the show. This is the last time we get to see Hooper X and Alyssa. Alyssa comes back in Silent Bob Reboot, but we see Alyssa and Holden and Banky and Brody and stuff. So it was fun to reconnect with the whole crew one more time for what we thought was going to be the last time. Turns out it wasn't, but hot damn if this movie is not a fun watch or rewatch. Alright, moving on to the number 6 spot is the somewhat controversial, and I say somewhat very loosely, it is very controversial, the Tusk. I love Tusk. Tusk is a fun movie. If you watch my review, I have a lot of pretty harsh criticisms of that movie, and I think those harsh criticisms stick and are valid. However, at the same time, you will never see another movie like Tusk. Tusk is its own beast, and the fact that everybody committed to that movie and committed to the point where they were like, let's just make this the best damn walrus movie we ever could. Make it scary and creepy and funny and gory, and it's everything it needs to be and nothing that it doesn't. And what can I say? I love it. Michael Parks gives one of the best performances I've seen of the previous decade in that film. He just knocks it out of the park. Michael Parks, one of my favorite actors. God rest his soul. Moving on to my top 5 Kevin Smith movies. In the number 5 spot, we have Red State. I love Red State. Red State is awesome. Red State is the other side of the coin that Clerks is. They're both made with the same exact creative energy that fueled them. This determination of everybody saying, you can't do something. No, I'm going to show you I can. And both of them kind of accidentally being like a perfect feature. I really, really like Red State. A lot of people kind of were dismissive of it, but I think time has walked with that film very well, especially since we're seeing cropping up more and more like little families like this one. And the whole frenzy that happened at with the Capitol earlier in the year and stuff like that. You can see how extremism can lead to like chaos, and the ideology of belief that drives you is pretty terrifying when you break it down. So yeah, as I say, I think this is a strong sister film to both Clerks and to Dogma, which I'll talk about both of those shortly. But I love Red State. Again, John Goodman's awesome, the whole cast is awesome. Michael Parks, I cannot sing that man's praises enough. Just watch his sermon. His sermon is so disturbing and so exceptionally well acted. And he ropes you in with every single line of dialogue. He really he sells it and makes you believe that this man believes. So yeah, Red State is my number 5 movie. For my number 4 movie, I pick Clerks. Clerks is his first movie. Clerks is in probably most ways his best movie, but it lands in my number 4 in the rankings of Smith just because the ones that I talk about after hit me more emotionally, whereas I think as a film, Clerks has very few faults. All the faults of the film, the lack of mise-en-scène and stuff like that, kind of work to the film's benefit. It feels like a grunge band that's like rocking out in a garage, and that kind of fuels the appreciation of the film in a weird way because it's kind of commenting on that culture and stuff like that. This was just the perfect movie made at the perfect time. It's lightning in a bottle that will never be recaptured ever again. It will forever be Kevin Smith's best film, and I don't think that's inarguable. Because its criticisms are pretty few. As I say, I think it's his tightest film. It's in a lot of ways his best film, even though it kind of feels like a practice film. So yeah, Clerks is my number 4. Plus, it has surprisingly good performances from a cast who didn't act. Jeff Anderson, again, is an extreme highlight as Randall and Dante. Brian O'Halloran, I reviewed all these movies. I never really sang his praises. He's so good as Dante. And I look forward to seeing what those cats are up to, hopefully next year with Clerks 3. Speaking of 3, my number 3 pick is probably my most controversial pick on here is Jersey Girl. I love Jersey Girl. I have a daughter myself, and I love that girl more than anything. And this movie is sort of like a love letter to Harley Part 1. I love this movie. I loved it ever since I saw it in the theater opening weekend with my mom, who at the time had never seen a Kevin Smith movie. She didn't like druggy kind of movies or anything like that. She doesn't like vulgar. She didn't like vulgar films. So getting her to see a Kevin Smith movie was kind of hard. However, she saw this movie with me, and she loved this movie. This is his most inviting feature film. It's PG-13. It was made with the intent for a whole family to come and watch. And I think it is pretty edgy for a PG-13 movie even now. But it's also so good, inescapably good, and it kind of was attacked wrongfully so when it came out because it was caught up in the whole Bennifer thing because they had broken up, and so then they had to very quickly like say, hey, J-Lo's not really in this movie. That was just like a gimmick to get you to come and see it, but don't worry, she's not here. It's actually Ben Affleck, and it's Armageddon 2 because it's Ben Affleck and Liv Tyler once more. And that was kind of like the energy going into it, and the critics were just trying to one-up each other, trying to see who could come up with the worst review for the film, the most eye-catching headline of a negative review, just to capitalize on the Gigli thing. And yeah, this movie isn't the most original film in the world. However, it's Kevin Smith's first formula film, and after this, he really wouldn't make many of those. Again, certainly if you've seen like Tusk or Yoga Hosers or Red State or something, you know that he doesn't really make formula features. That's the biggest flaw with this movie, is you could fit it into a nice little box with, once you start watching, you can kind of figure out beginning, middle, and end what's going to happen. That said, the performances are so real and authentic, and the humor is really good and really funny. There's some throwaway lines in this that I quote quite often. So yeah, if you do learn nothing else from this, learn this one thing. Just give Jersey Girl a shot. It's a much better movie than you'd ever heard that movie get credit for. I love that movie very dearly. Moving on to my number 2 pick is Dogma. I think Dogma is easily Kevin Smith's best screenplay. It has some of the finest performances of all the actors that appear in the film. The worst part about Dogma is it was made by a filmmaker who didn't have the confidence in himself to make the screenplay that he wrote as epic as it needed to be. It needed to be a comic book movie, and he shot it like Clerks. And that's the unfortunate thing about Dogma. However, Dogma is, as I say, in my estimation, a perfect screenplay. If I were to teach a class on screenplay, I would have people look at this one, because this one, oftentimes when you're trying to deconstruct something, Scream is an excellent example of this. You deconstruct a genre, you like to point out the issues, or Cabin in the Woods would be another one. You like to point out the issues with said genre. But once the issues are exposed, you've expressed your criticism, but you've done nothing kind of beyond that. This movie goes one step further, where it gives criticisms of religion, but then it offers solutions. And I think that is what was absolutely compelling to me, and something that I haven't really ever seen done as excellently as with this screenplay for Dogma. It is incredibly critical of religion, but it offers solutions to each one of those things, and it gives you the deconstruction of religion in bite-sized portions. First, it asks you to accept, okay, here, for the sake of this film, religion is all real biblical truth. Okay, and then it gives you about 10-15 minutes to digest that, and then it starts folding in the other characters, each of whom has a different deconstruction of a religious section of religion that they want to address. You get Rufus, the black apostle who was left out of the book because he was black. Left out of the Bible because he was black, who then wants to express the whole idea of religion, ignoring in Western culture the whole fact that most of the Bible takes place in the Middle East and Africa, and therefore most of the biblical people would be black men and women. And then you have the Muse, the Serendipity, who comes in and discusses the anti-female agenda of the Catholic Church, especially, but of religion in general. Then it just takes each of these little segments with each character. I'm not just going to continue going on through. I could all day because it's fucking great. But that screenplay, if you haven't, it's an almost impossible movie to find now because of the whole Weinstein thing. So if you do find it, it's more power to you. Pick it up. It's probably worth something. It's also probably pretty expensive. But pick up the book. You can buy it. Miramax had put out the book years and years ago, the screenplay, and you can pick that up for $7-8. Pick it up. It's, as I say, one of the best screenplays I've ever read. And it includes so much that was not kept in the movie that I think really helps flesh out the characters, and even some criticisms I had with the filmic narrative itself. So yeah, and also Ben Affleck gives, for my money, his best performance ever in Dogma. He is so good in that movie. Also Linda Fiorentino and Alan Rickman are just top tier. Alright, my number 1 favorite Kevin Smith movie is Chasing Amy. Was there ever any doubt? Chasing Amy is spectacular. It is easily his most autobiographical film, probably even more so than Clerks, in that Clerks was kind of taking his life and doing a David Lynchian interpretation of Dante's Inferno. So it's real life pushed to 11, whereas Chasing Amy feels a lot more authentic and real because it was essentially something that he kind of lived through. It's on one level, a man who believes himself very liberally minded, discovering that he is very conservatively minded and is struggling to cope with the fact that he doesn't necessarily know his identity, his friend's identity, or the girl that he is very much in love with. It's also a acknowledgement of how he felt like he had sold out in order to make Mallrats when he should have stuck and made something that was a little more personal, like he did with Clerks. And that's a whole section of the film. Holden is trying very much to retain his intellectual integrity of as a creator, whereas Banky is like, hey, we hit pay dirt. We need to like sell this thing and make cartoons and comic books and get all the money in the world. And that was kind of what happened. He made Clerks and immediately went off to make Mallrats, something that he wasn't necessarily ready for, that didn't really have anything to say, and he felt like he lost something, and this movie kind of explores that. It has exceptionally good performances from Ben Affleck and Jason Lee, both of whom are great in every Kevin Smith movie. But it is Joey Lauren Adams as Alyssa, and Dwight Ewell as Hooper X that really shine in this film. I like that it's the quote-unquote minority characters that really kind of are the leading voices that like drive the narrative through to conclusion, but the cis white male refuses to listen to them and instead listens to the toxic cis white male that is like feeding his inner turmoil. And that I think is just as relevant today as it was 20 years ago when the movie was made. The biggest criticism of this movie is that it's not a bad movie, just made from the wrong character's perspective, and I'd absolutely agree with that. If we could get a version of Chasing Amy from Banky's perspective, or from Alyssa's perspective, or from Hooper's perspective, I would absolutely take that. But I don't think that this film is invalid because it's from Holden's perspective. It may be the least interesting angle that the film is examining its subject matter from, but I don't think it's a bad one, especially when the whole purpose of the film is to kind of reform that ideology of Holden. Holden is not the hero of the film. He may be the main character. He may be a character that you're even asked to kind of like or agree with at times, but he is not the hero of that story. Certainly the hero of that story is Alyssa, who is telling him all the correct things. And he just willfully chooses not to listen to it because he's like following his own insecurities. As I say, I think an Alyssa-driven version of this movie, or a Hooper, or even a Banky, a closeted gay man who is outed as being a gay man in a relationship with Hooper in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, that would have been a better version of this movie. But the movie that we got, I think, is exceptionally well written, incredibly well acted, is visually interesting when it needs to be, but it's subtle, made low budget, and feels like a nice sister film to Clerks in that way. And it has something powerful to say. It has very dated terminology. The movie was made like almost 25 years ago. But I don't think it's any less valid than it was then, and something that should be viewed more often. So yeah, I love Chasing Amy. It's my favorite of his. It spoke to me when I first saw it. This was the movie that made me fall in love with Kevin Smith, as it did for a lot of critics who shortly jumped off that train. Clerks was the first one I saw, and I liked it. Mallrats kept me going because I liked the energy of that film, but it was Chasing Amy that made me fall in love with the creator. Dogma was a very close second, and then I stuck with him, and I look forward to seeing if he has something really personal to say with Clerks 3. Supposedly the film will attack his own experiences, having almost touched death with his massive heart attack from 2018. I look forward to seeing how Randall and Dante have always kind of been his posit characters for the two sides of himself, his own duality. And with Clerks and with Clerks 2, he had some really interesting things to say about that. I want to see what he has to say with his life perspective in a complete tonal shift. If you watch videos of Kevin Smith circa 2007, 2008, and watch videos of Kevin Smith now, or just listen to the first couple of Smodcast episodes from back then, and then just put on any Hollywood Babylon or any Fat Man Beyond. From now, it's like a completely different person in a weird way. His perspective shifted and is in a much more positive place, and this current era of Kevin Smith is my favorite one, and I want to see what art comes from that. He showed quite a bit of promise with Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. I want to see what he can do with Clerks 3. So yeah, thanks for watching these videos. I will take a slight break from Kevin Smith, but you will see periodic Smith videos pop up now and then. As I said before, I want to tackle his TV shows, i.e. The Clerks unaired pilot, the Clerks TV show, which is pretty grand. I want to tackle some of his TV work he did with The Flash and Supergirl and Man-Child and a handful of others, Reaper. I want to go into his producerial work, the ones that he released either under View Askew or had a hand in getting made. We're talking Good Will Hunting, we're talking the Drawing Flies in a Better Place, and Now You Know. These are ones that I'd like to tackle at some point here, as well as Jay and Silent Bob's super groovy cartoon movie, as well as the TV show that he currently has produced and wrote and directed for. I haven't watched any of it. I've heard very mixed things on the internet from sort of anti-woke culture, and that is the He-Man spin-off that he did. So, I plan to tackle those, but not every week as I have been doing. I'll probably start doing stuff every week again once the trailer drops for Clerks 3 and we have a hard date for when that film comes. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate that you've stuck with me on this fun little journey that I've committed to doing. And if you watched all these videos, dude, you get a high five. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll shout you out for the next Kevin Smith video I do. Thanks for watching, everybody, and peace.